On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America. As a part of his agenda, he and his allies would limit access to birth control, ban medication abortion, and enact a nationwide abortion ban with or without Congress. And get this, he plans to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Simply put, they are out of their minds. And one must ask, why exactly is it that they don't trust women? Well, we trust women. We trust women. And when Congress passes a bill to restore reproductive freedom, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law.
Live reaction to Kamala Harris's speech to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Johanna Maska, who served as President Obama's White House Director of Press Advance, is with me. She's also the host of the Press Advance podcast. It's interesting you mentioned that passage about foreign policy, talked about Ukraine, and then talked about the war in Gaza, reaffirming America's support for Israel. I don't know about you, Johanna, that was the only point where I thought some of her advisors would have been nervous as to how that would have been received in the hall. But you're right, it seemed to get a good reaction.
Well, yeah, because, for before in the lead up, and I should say, Joe Biden couldn't have delivered that address. He could not have, right? And in the lead up to this convention, when they were planning under Joe Biden, that was the biggest fear, is that the Palestinian protesters would overrun the convention. So, when she was able to deliver that very effectively and compassionately in a way that she had built her own bio to show that narrative for civil rights, for human rights. I think she is uniquely skilled and uniquely capable at this moment of delivering that in a way that, with all love in my heart for our president, who is currently our president, but of course passing the torch, wouldn't have been able to.
Johanna, I just want to read you some of what Donald Trump has been posting on his Truth Social platform and get your reaction. He said that Kamala Harris said thank you too many times. And he said that he talked too much about her childhood, where she should have been talking about the border, inflation and crime. What's your reaction?
Well, the reason why she was saying thank you so many times at the beginning was because the crowd would not stop cheering when she walked in. You could tell she was just trying to say, please, I need to speak. And then eventually she transitioned from thank you to let's get on to business. So, I don't think that most Americans are worried about her saying thank you to the people of America, or at the Democratic Party for nominating her. That's, probably not going to be, convincing. The attack on her bio, she needed to share that. It's going to be tough for him September 10th, when we're coming up on this debate, for him to tell the same story, right? Because here's a guy who really grew up with a lot of privilege, in New York. Of course, he built a business, but he had significant investment by his father to do that. Whereas Kamala Harris talks about, her parents falling in love in an unlikely love that disrupted her grandparents in India's plan to marry their mother in an arranged marriage. It's a very different story,
Yeah.
and one that probably connects with a lot of people across America.
Thank you for all your messages this morning. Let me give you a flavour of some of them. Dominic in Salzburg in Austria. We are semi-international on this programme. Says, Kamala Harris' speech, fluent, articulate, most of all heartfelt, a powerful, committed and persuasive account of herself and an inspiration for the country she loves. Steve in West London says, what a lady, what a night. Nigel says the speech was nothing more than empty rhetoric. I hope the American people don't fall for it in the way the electorate did for Labour in the UK. And John says, hi, James, I thought it was an inspiring speech. To pick up on a point you made earlier, UK political parties could learn from this. Moving party leaders' speeches into prime time may help to galvanise voters. I should just say, Johanna, I'm guessing your husband is disappointed because no sign of Beyonce so far.
He literally said to me before she was coming out, do you think Beyonce is going to come out before or after? I was like, if she's coming out, it's after because, she needs to play her off. And then I was kind of thinking maybe she is going to come on and play her off. But, I don't know what the surprise was. I had not known that Leon Panetta was speaking, but I don't think that was the surprise.
I mean, with the greatest will in the world to former Defence Secretary and former Chief of Staff of the White House, Leon Panetta, he's not Queen Bee.
Yeah, no, not quite the same. But, I see Sean Spicer, who, of course, I know well, and we do things on TV together. But Sean is saying, they just did it to up TV ratings. I don't know that I would give us that much credit as a Democrat. I don't know if maybe they just didn't have everything sorted out. Of course, they were planning this convention with less than a month's notice that the nominee was different. But I suspect that, Beyonce, let's say she needs to be ready. Should there be, other events down the line? So, a little bit of a disappointment, but.
I mean, the other name that was linked was Taylor Swift. And actually, maybe there is a serious point here because a lot of people are asking the question, will Taylor Swift make a significant intervention in this presidential election campaign? You would assume on the side of the Democrats. And were that to happen, how much influence would she have, do you think, Johanna?
I think most Swifties are already with Harris, but I could be totally wrong. And I will also say I got another message that said, I will vote for Kamala because she didn't have Beyonce come, because they wanted to hear serious substance and they didn't want, a lot of fluff. So there are the few out there. Would it convince a lot of people because Taylor Swift told them to vote? I mean, she's moved markets. She's got people who want to come to her concerts. Absolutely. Sometimes I don't see completely the, same message. They have the ability to reach a wider audience, but more it would be like if she did a sit-down interview with Kamala Harris and got Kamala Harris to talk to her followers. That I think would be almost more powerful than Taylor Swift saying, just vote for the person who I, endorse.
Talk us through the next few weeks, Johanna. I mean, we've got, I suppose, the next big thing to watch out for is the first TV debate between Trump and Harris. And I suppose the key is Harris needs to maintain the momentum she's built up over the past 6 weeks or so until then.
Yeah, that's huge. That debate, when she's on the same stage as Donald Trump, I mean, we've seen this over and over. We saw Hillary Clinton and, Donald Trump does some weird stuff. Like he moved behind her. He's an unpredictable guy. Everybody who works for him, who still adore him, say he's unpredictable. So you never know what to expect. But when I was watching her speak tonight, I thought, she could be real tough in this debate. I think that's, again, the confidence that Kamala needed to build in this convention is there were a lot of people, when I was talking about the Democratic bench, I was not talking about Kamala Harris as the first person because she wasn't necessarily, in the spotlight as the vice president. Well, now she is, and she has taken that spotlight, and there is so much confidence. And even when you saw some of the other candidates who she was considering as vice president, there was a reason she went with Walz. So there's going to be a lot of confidence. Now, there's in front of the scenes, and then there's behind the scenes. She has to do some interviews. She's got to start talking to press in a more public fashion. There's behind the scenes, which is clipping all of this convention, all of the speakers who just spoke, all of the messages that went out, and sending them to all of the people who need to hear them and getting their information, making sure that they've got a plan to vote, making sure that they're registered to vote. That's like the behind the scenes field organizers' most important work that never gets coverage. The reporters, meanwhile, will be asking every day for an interview, and she's going to have to give it, or it just, leads to bigger chorus.
Because that is something that Donald Trump has been hammering away at in recent weeks, saying, look, she's not doing interviews. Why is that? She hasn't done a press conference. Why is that? And she's been able to get away with it up until now. But also, I mean, you know how the media game works, Johanna. The press will get a bit bored of her refusing to do that. She does need to do it soon.
Well, I know how the media game works very well because I was dealing with their frustrations with President Obama. I really liked the viewer who wrote in and talked about the length in which Donald Trump spoke, because he often will say, oh, Kamala Harris won't take questions and all these things. He takes a lot of questions, but he doesn't actually answer the questions. So, I think what you're going to see is Kamala Harris, when she does take an interview, she needs to be prepared to answer those questions. And I think, to the skepticism of the one, person who had written in saying it's just hollow words, she's got to be able to go deep with these reporters. And she knows that. So she's going to do prep. I mean, I'm seeing her prep like she's never prepped before for all of these instances and really rise to the occasion. So we shall see. She also could stumble. And those stumbles, depending on what happens, Trump's going to try to blast that worldwide, certainly to every community within the United States. And, that could hurt her as well.
Just briefly, Johanna, and we really appreciate your time this evening. Is complacency a risk?
It was. I think she's done a pretty good job tonight of motivating everyone who had some second guesses, because I think they're going to be the ones who President Obama had a famous line before, we got to get Cousin Pookie off the couch. I think there's going to be a lot of people getting Cousin Pookie off the couch this election cycle. She's just got to get them in these last 10 weeks to the polls and get them to vote.
Johanna, I'm sorry for your husband's sake. There was no Beyonce in the end. We all wanted it too, but thank you so much for your time. Really great to chat.
Great to join you.
That's Johanna Maska there, who served as President Obama's White House Director of Press Advance and is the host of the Press Advance podcast with her reaction to Kamala Harris's keynote.